And thank you for joining us today. With me is John Cameron, Richard Fields, and with our guest, Tim Everett of the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast and a pilot out of San Diego in California. Gentlemen, last week we talked about the Russian opposition leader, Alexei. Well, Richard, can you help me with his last name?
Navalny or something like that.
Navalny. Thank you. I butcher that. Alexei Navalny. He was going to turn himself in to the Russian authorities to catch everybody up. He was attempted assassination attempt, and he was flown to Germany. He recovered, and he said he was going to go back, which surprised me. Why would you go back to Russia? Well, he flew back to Russia, was promptly arrested, had an overnight hearing at a police station, and now he's in jail for 30 days with no contact with anybody until they have a normal, regular hearing. I just kind of wanted to give everybody an update on what was happening, because I don't understand, other than the fact that, your own personal safety is not the only thing you can threaten. And so maybe that's why you would go back. I don't understand why you would go back to Russia under that circumstance.
Well, perhaps he believes in the larger purpose of more individual freedom, reform, whatever in Russia, as opposed to his own personal safety. I mean, you would almost have to be that in order to be an opposition leader against Putin in any case.
Yeah, Putin. Yeah, being on the wrong side of Putin in a country that's completely controlled by Putin, almost like being a Republican in Hollywood. I mean, it's bad. It's bad. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't understand why he went back. He was martyring himself, which was what my comment was last week, that it seemed like he was martyring himself. But then it occurred to me, I guess last night as I was reading the story, that there's friends and family still in Russia. So it's, his own personal safety is not the only thing you can threaten. Mm-hmm. And so, maybe that's why you go back. You go face 3.5 years in a Russian prison versus, your friends and family having to face 10 years in a Russian prison. It may be maybe something you're willing to do, because I probably would if that was my choice.
Yeah. So, and Soviet Union, it's the people they're in power. They're part of they're one of the oligarchs. They're, rubbing elbows with Putin. The minute they decide they don't like Putin, something Putin's done, they get jackmawed. They disappear for a while. All of a sudden, instead of being a shining light of Russian success, they're an embezzler. So, and I think we're seeing some of that same kind of stuff happen in the States, unfortunately. But it's maybe we're a little slicker at it now than they are. But my hats off to them for going back.
We're a little more subtle. Yeah, there's some courage there, but I'm just kind of worried about what they were threatening with. So anyway, we'll move on to California's disaster. The EDD is an ongoing, continued disaster. Millions. I think the last count was 1.4 million people were pushed off of EDD. Not pushed off, I guess. They're suspended. Their payments were suspended while they reevaluated themselves. God, they got their, what is it? Oh, what did they call it? I actually had to go through the process myself. Had to re-verify my ID. Verify your identity, because they said it was accounted to fraud or connected to fraud or potentially connected to fraud. Mm-hmm. And then you have to, because it took so long to do that, then you have to recertify because the system took so long to get you verified. It's an absolute mess. And I actually called my assemblyman and talked to someone in his office, and they don't even know what's going on. Nobody has any idea. It's just, we can maybe be able to help you fix it. Give us a call if you can't get it resolved. It's insane that no one knows what's going on. The EDD is an absolute disaster. And I feel bad for the average worker at EDD, because this is a disaster decades in the making, and the politicians made it, not the average person at EDD.
I agree. Yeah, the EDD's been a disaster forever, and they're correct me if I'm wrong, but they've had a couple $100 million contracts let for upgrading their system, and I think they're still using COBOL or Fortran or something. I don't know. This is the type of government that maybe, as well as EDD works, they can help out the upcoming administration on the distribution of vaccine. Based on that, human beings will have mutated enough by the year 2423 that we don't have to worry about the vaccine.
I like to take a little bit more of a global view of EDD and all other agencies of the government which are there to help us. They don't. All they do is they take our money, cut off 80% off the top, and give us 20% back. That's all that any welfare agency or unemployment agency or helping agency is capable of doing, because it's the bureaucrats and the politicians that end up with the lion's share of the tax money or the inflation derived money that funds the whole thing. Yeah. And of course, the reason we have an unemployment problem in the first place is no reason other than government action. Most recent government action being the lockdowns, which have been proven, which are statistically, empirically, almost no question that they are totally ineffective as far as having any beneficial impact upon the coronavirus.
Well, that's just the latest one. I'll agree with Richard again. I hate to do that so often on the show. Usually I like to disagree with him, but in this case, I think he's right. 30 years ago, maybe even 40 years ago, somebody looked at the numbers dumped into what they called welfare back then. I don't know what they call it now. And they said if they just dumped all that money electronically into a computer system and had it send out checks to families of four, not that there's many nuclear families of four that were on welfare, that I'll get $40,000 a year. And this was back when $40,000 a year was actually above the median income for this country. But if you look at what they're getting now, if inflation adjusted, it would be like $100,000. There, as Richard said, the bureaucracy slices off all the money. Just like they do in the school district. It goes in there and half of it goes to administrative costs and union dues and pensions and all the rest of that. And when they ask you for money, they bring you into the classroom and point at mold in the ceilings. The government lives off pointing at the mold in the ceilings, but they're the ones, and to add to what Richard said about this latest crisis, you look at all the barriers to employment in the state of California. You look at all the labor laws, you look at all the licensing. What is it in California? Upwards of 40% of people need some kind of license to have a job. Anyway, so yeah. Government causes the problem and then messes up its own solution to the problem it caused.
Yeah, hey, Tim, are you facing that kind of issues down there in San Diego with the EDD?
Well, I don't know. I'm so essential that they decided to let me keep working instead of locking me down. But I'm sure it is, since it's part of the whole California system. I'm sure people are having issues. I do not know any anecdotal evidence down here regarding that. But I got a kick out of the article linked that you sent to us all, where the lady, the beautician, was lamenting, oh my gosh, if they don't give me some money here pretty soon, I'm going to have to go do some illegal under the table beautician work. And so I was thinking, better get busy, because there are a lot of other people that are doing it. So I talked to some family members whose names will go unmentioned because I don't want to incriminate them in this horrible, horrible crime of getting your hair cut. But they did go to a black market barber, and my barber in El Centro, where I go to get my hair cut. He does the same thing. They blacken the front part of the barber shop or the beauty salon or whatever it is with drapes or whatever they use, and then you have to go through the back door, of course. So it's just like speakeasy.
Like a speakeasy.
Speakeasy,
yeah.
Yes. Only
Richard would know about those. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So speakeasy from Prohibition era, where the government's idiotic laws, in this case lockdown laws, are causing, it's not like, you're either going to get your hair cut from your your significant other or from some illegal black market barber or whatever, in either case, with your significant other, you're violating, you're getting your hair cut not by a licensed barber, heaven forbid. That I know. Oh, the horror of doing that. And so here we are. We're causing Americans that are normally, law abiding, that should be able to be working right now. And so maybe this will segue way into the issue regarding the one in your again in your email to us. There was one study that was mentioned that showed that lockdowns are ineffective in stopping the transmission of this virus, and they are. I decided that I would go look over at the Fat Emperor, which is oh gosh, I can't remember his name. Found out about him through Tom Woods, one of his podcasts. Guy's brilliant. He has, when I heard this just a few weeks ago, this podcast, it was 22 different studies that all came to the same exact conclusion. And now it's up to 27 over at the Fat Emperor website, where there are all these different countries, different studies. I looked for the one that you linked to, and I'm not sure if it's there or is not there. It's kind of hard to tell. I did it real quick, but anyway, yeah, I mean, if we follow the science, let's follow the science, because the science says that lockdowns do nothing to stop the spread of the virus. So, oh my gosh, don't you follow the science? Come on now, what's wrong with you government type peeps like New Scum? Why don't you just follow the science and just open everything back up? Then the EDD and its issues and the people trying to defraud the EDD out of their money, like the guys in prison or in the halfway house, the guys in Uganda. Hey, there's another segue into an upcoming topic on today's show. All those people are, trying to defraud the government, and so now they're so careful. The people that should be getting the help are not. But it was all caused because somebody didn't follow the science, and somebody decided to lock the whole stupid state down. I can't believe it. Oh, wait,
there is a solution. It's the solution that John and I have taken, which is just to go shaggy.
Oh yeah, that's true. And I have, and James.
Well, you can't see the top knot in the back. It's down to my butt now. Wait,
that's like
no,
James.
it's not there. Yeah.
James,
yeah, well, we're gonna skip the hair thing for a minute because I'll start talking about how great my hair is, and no one wants to hear that.
I want to hear it.
But we are talking about the science and the lockdowns. That's the interesting thing is there was no science early on. And everybody says follow the science, and there actually wasn't any science, and everybody was making decisions based upon kind of theoretical science. Well, we now actually have real-world science, and the real-world science says that the lockdowns don't really work. Well, part of the reason they don't work is because they didn't take human activity into account, that if a burden carried voluntarily is less heavy than one that's been forced upon you. So when you force people to lock down with laws and rules and regulations, rather than just say, hey, look, we're facing this crisis. We need you to limit your movement. Be careful when you go out. Rather than just doing that.
Stay home. Stay safe.
Right? They give you all these kind of BS propaganda. They lie to you, tell you to follow the science that hasn't actually been done yet. Yeah. And then when you actually get science done, they call you a science denier, and you're saying, but I'm following the science. The science says that your lockdowns don't really work. They don't have an impact one way or the other.
Well, James, in that same website, I think he's the one. I hear so many different things because Tom Woods has been on this COVID kick for a long time, but I'm not sure if for sure it's him. But there have been other studies prior to this whole thing, and they all concluded the same thing. So there have been scientific studies that have shown that lockdown type approaches to quelling a viral outbreak of something is ineffective. And
Well-
I think it's partly because of what James says, and it's also because that's what viruses do. They spread. I mean, they spread easily, and it's particularly viral. What is it? What is the word I'm thinking of? It's easy
Virulent?
to catch. Yeah, it's easy to catch.
Yes.
Well, people confuse quarantines with lockdowns. A quarantine actually would work. That's like the boy in the box with no access to any of the outside world, because he's going to die if he isn't totally quarantined. If you could quarantine everybody, that would work. Bacteria, you can't get through a solid wall. But in the real world, you can't quarantine. You have to eat. You have to get food. You have to go about your business. You have to either actually work or apply for your unemployment checks. You can't do it. It's simply not possible. Now you've got gendarmes in places like England and California who would try to force you to quarantine, but it's still not going to work because they can't put that kind of draconian regulation on everybody and everyone and everybody. It's just simply not logistically possible. So you can lock down as much as you want, but the germs are still going to get through the open door, and the doors are going to open every once in a while.
And I'd like to add something to that. There's another level to this that we're maybe not talking about. When everybody I talk to on the left and the right, and the smart people like us in the middle where all the good thinking happens, the libertarian world, what this does is it makes people not listen to anything that the government says. And maybe that's a good thing in general, but there are some times where it'd be nice to listen to people who were the experts. The problem is that we're all now so distrustful of expertise that we don't even listen to real experts. And the real experts said very early on, this is lunacy. This group of people do not catch, or if they do catch, they don't get sick, the disease. Those are children, young people, young healthy adults. This group of people are at risk. They're the obese, they're the aged, they're people with pre-existing conditions. Let these people, the people who don't get sick, do whatever they would like to do and protect the other people. But once again, the one size fits none government policy applied risk levels unscientifically. And so not only did it not work because of the heavy top-down approach, but it destroyed any validity at all that government has. I want to know when somebody's going to demand the death sentence for Fauci, because Fauci came out and said you shouldn't use masks because they don't work. And then he came out and said masks do work. He didn't say I lied to you. He should have said, I lied to you because I wanted to make sure that the medical professionals, the care workers, had enough masks. So now we've got this so-called expert admitting that he lied to people, and we still don't know. There's a lot of studies that show that masks don't work. But anyway, we're beating this to death, and James is over there, I think, itching to get onto another subject, I think.
Well, I'm sitting here trying to decide if we should talk about the Ugandan election or if we want to talk about FEMA's to the rescue.
FEMA to the rescue.
FEMA, Joe Biden has said he's going to manage the hell out of this virus response, and he's going to do that.
100 years now,
and he said that he's going to do that by sending in FEMA and National Guard people to help with the vaccination. And I'm going, well, in what experience in the last 30 years do we have that FEMA can do something like this in an even remotely competent fashion? I mean, FEMA is literally one of the worst organizations to rely on for this kind of thing.
I remember FEMA's stellar performance during Hurricane Katrina.
What we need to do is put the real hero of Hurricane Katrina in charge of this, Walmart.
I think it's really there's a solution in plain sight. The states are pretty much in charge of the distribution of the vaccine, and each state is doing it differently. California is doing it incompetently. West Virginia, of all places, is doing it quite competently. They are not letting the vaccine go to waste by expiring or getting too warm before it's used. They're not using one contractor, a CVS or somebody like that, to do all of the work. They're basically letting free market principles work. Whatever drugstore wants to get involved, whatever medical care practitioner wants to get involved in the process, West Virginia is saying, go for it. They have set up an essentially quasi-competitive system in order to get the vaccine out quickly. Alaska has done something similar, and they have the highest vaccination rates in the country. And it's just a really, really stark comparison to the centrally controlled systems like California and what Biden is proposing for now for the entire country. What Biden is proposing is destined to not work very well.
Yeah, well, we've seen the failure of top-down control on this whole thing from the start. It's been a complete abject failure of top-down control. And if there's one thing we all can take out of this, it's that. It's that, our systems are either too big and too cumbersome to actually function in an emergency, or they're just incompetent. One of the two, maybe both.
I think both. I'm voting for both. And and the other thing that happens here, I was reading an article somewhere. I think Fee talked about why they're not, why the FDA is held up a perfectly viable vaccine that worked and worked on March 12th, I think. And they had 25,000 volunteers to basically expose themselves to the virus to make sure it worked. And the FDA wouldn't approve it. And so it's basically type 1 error and type 2 error. Type 1 error is if you say go ahead with something and then a whole bunch of people die. And then when you're in a Senate hearing, you can get very uncomfortable. A type 2 error is where you say, no, we can't let it out because it might be dangerous. And you're not called into that Senate hearing for making a really bad decision, but another 250,000 people die. So when you have bureaucrats in charge, their motivation is not getting the job done. Their motivation is keeping their job and not getting in trouble. So that's another reason for keeping bureaucracy out of this thing. Not that they ever will. Yeah.
Okay. No, I don't think they know how. Now, we are going to switch gears one last time before the end of the show. We've got a comment from one of our friends in Uganda, which actually brings us up to our last topic. Uganda banned all social media access right before the election. They are now back online, and the president of Uganda won his re-election bid. It's like 58% to 39% or something. And, of course, the USA is saying they need to audit the elections.
Well, can you say hypocrisy? That's my question.
Hypocrisy.
The United States has decided to, in its wisdom, after the so-called insurrection at the Capitol earlier this month, they have decided that the social media companies, Facebook, Twitter, nobody uses Yahoo anymore. I'm dating myself. Facebook, Twitter, all the rest of them, YouTube, all have, without exception, banned the president of the United States. Well, I don't want to hear what Trump is tweeting about any more than anybody else does. But if the organizations that control 90% of social internet traffic all act at the same time under fear that they will be regulated out of existence or trust busted out of existence if they don't, that is a situation that we have to fear. We are experiencing 1984, 37 years too late, where the truth simply can't be spoken, nor can the lie be spoken if it's if it's not approved by the elites. We have a situation where Ron Paul, of all people, who was no pro-Trumper, was kicked off of Facebook. We have a situation where
it was a mistake.
Yeah, I know it was a mistake.
A lot of mistakes.
It's a mistake that anybody is kicked off of Facebook or Twitter for the very simple reason that if you have bad speech, hateful speech, incorrect speech, the best antidote is not censorship, but corrective speech, more speech. And what we're doing is we're saying if speech is bad by somebody's arbitrary definition, it must be banned. What we should be saying as a government, as a society, is that if speech is bad, it should be counteracted with good speech.
Yeah, and you talk about hypocrisy in Uganda. When the I think it was the president of Uganda said we're shutting down all social media because they're promoting one side of the election, they're pro my opponent and not letting my stuff through. So, basically they're censoring me, so I'm just shutting down all. And Twitter and Google were up in arms because everybody in Uganda has a right to be able to see all sides of an issue. So hypocrisy, hypocrisy, hypocrisy. Yeah.
Tim?
Yeah, I mean, what more can I say? I've told people that we're cheering the whole Parler thing, and Twitter should have gotten rid of Trump at the very beginning, and he probably would have been reelected because people wouldn't have seen what craziness he would utter on.
I didn't even think
on
about
not so
that. That makes sense. Yeah.
On not such rare occasion either. He would have had to go in front of the cameras at a press conference like everybody else used to do back in the day, and so it would have hopefully would have been a little more controlled, and he would have hopefully been a little muzzled by his handlers. But as a result of this whole Twitter thing, but I'm kind of just playing both sides here, but the thing is, these people that cheer this kind of stuff, are not going to be so cheerful. They're going to be a little butthurt when it happens to them and their guys, and it very well could. And here's a situation with a little bit, being Uganda. Remember Idi Amin Dada?
Yeah.
Idi
Field
Amin
Marshal
Dada.
Dr. General Idi Amin Dada. Yeah.
General. Yes.
Yeah.
Boy, what
He
a
liked to
time
eat
that
people.
was.
Yeah.
Yes, he did. He did. Johannesburgers and stuff. So,
Mhm.
yeah. Anyway, so when it comes around to bite them, they're going to have they're singing a different tune.
Yeah.
They're
Well,
gonna.
One would hope.
yeah, to end the show, private companies have a right to do everything they want, but if they do it under political pressure, are they doing what they want, or are they responding to political pressure, or are they buying future favors? This kind of thing. It's
Or are they saying, like Zuckerberg does, regulate me, please, make sure that I don't have any competition?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, that's the thing. Regulate me. What it really means is regulate my competition because they can't afford to deal with the regulations. And with that, we are out of here. Thank you, gentlemen, for stopping by and for the conversation. And we would like,
Thank you.
from all of us here at Libertarian Counterpoint, you can catch us on Thursdays at 8 o'clock. You can catch Tim on Mondays at 5:30. And you can catch us all at libertariancounterpoint.com and on Facebook with all of that. We'll see you next week. And please remember to love everybody.
Everybody, you're a nicer man than I am, James.
Yes, I am.
Most